Okay, here we are, Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Quinn, K8QS.
I'm Tom, WA9TDD.
And what's the word, Bird?
What's the word? We're going to talk today about, let's see, how about the best height for dipole and wire high-frequency antennas?
Okay, well, my simple answer to that one is the best height is as high as you can get it in order to impress other hams, right? So you work somebody and you say, my dipole is at 175 feet up, and they are impressed. No, that's not the way to think about this.
No.
The height of a horizontal HF dipole above the ground is one of the most critical factors in how well it performs. In fact, you can have a perfectly tuned, highly efficient antenna, but if it's at the wrong height for your specific goal, it will feel like a dummy load or make you feel like you're a dummy who's loaded.
Right, and the most important thing to remember is the height is relative to the wavelength of the band you're operating on. For example, 33 feet in the air is a half wavelength on 20 meters, and that's great for long distance, DX, skip, all that. But the same 33 feet is only 1/8 wavelength on 80 meters, making it strictly a local regional antenna.
Right. So here is exactly how height above ground changes a dipole's performance. First off, we're going to look at the takeoff angle, the takeoff angle. So here we need to distinguish between DX, which you know is distance communication, and NVIS. What's NVIS, Tom?
Near vertical incidence skywave.
Yeah, so we use that to talk about close-in communication, right?
Right.
Rather than distance. So we got DX versus NVIS. So the takeoff angle is the elevation angle at which the majority of your RF energy leaves the antenna. The ground beneath your dipole acts like a mirror, or it should, reflecting radio waves upward. How those reflected waves combine with the direct waves completely dictates where your signal goes. Okay, so you got an angle, and the angle is going to change how far away. Once that bounces up and comes back down, what's going to happen here? Assuming there are some open band conditions, otherwise it'll never bounce off anything. So let's first talk about low height, and we'll just define this as for a mono band, or let's say less than a half wavelength. So the reflections from the ground push your RF energy almost straight up into the sky when it's real low. This creates a high takeoff angle, let's say 60 to 90 degrees, okay? Almost straight up. And the signal bounces off the ionosphere and comes straight back down in a very tight radius. It doesn't go off far. This is what Tom and I are calling, and everybody does, NVIS, near vertical incidence skywave. And it's perfect for regional communication, let's say for 0 to 400 miles, but it's terrible for intercontinental DX. Okay, so that's low height. Now, what about high height? Let's say, we'll just define it. We're doing this for the purposes of teaching about this. A half wavelength or higher, all right? As you raise that antenna up, the main lobes of radiation begin to flatten out toward the horizon, creating a lower takeoff angle. We think of verticals having a low takeoff angle, but we change our takeoff angle by the height of a dipole as well. So a lower takeoff angle might be 10 to 30 degrees. It means the signal strikes the ionosphere at a shallow angle, allowing it to skip much further, beep, beep, around the curvature of the Earth. So if you want to work DX long distance, you need a dipole that's at least a half wavelength high. Let me put it differently. It will work better. You can still work DX, but the height will make it even better.
The second point, Quinn, to consider on height of a vertical or a horizontal antenna is the feed point impedance and the standing wave. In free space, which is on Earth not possible, it's infinitely far from the ground. A perfectly cut resonant half-wave dipole has a feed point impedance of about 73 ohms. However, in reality, the ground interacts electromagnetically with the antenna, and that alters its impedance. When a dipole is very close to the ground, for example, an eighth of an inch or an eighth wavelength, the impedance drops significantly, often down to the 20 to 30 ohm range. And this will cause a mismatch with your 50 ohm coax. And that'll result in a higher standing wave, even if the wire length is technically correct. But as you raise the antenna, the impedance cycles up and down, eventually stabilizing near 73 ohms once you get a full wavelength or more in the air.
It's very interesting, Tom, to think of how this changes the impedance. And people don't think about that. I think for the most part, when they talk about how high to put the antenna, there's just this general urban legend that all you need is to get the antenna high. Well, actually, the higher the dipole, the more likely it is you're going to come in closer to the impedance that you want for your rig. Third, let's talk about ground losses. That's right, ground losses. The Earth is a rather poor, lousy reflector of RF energy for the most part. Now, there are different grounds and different places and all that, but for the most part, if you don't believe us, just take your ohm meter and stick the two sides of it in the ground and see how much electric you can get through there. Not very much. When your dipole is very low to the ground, a significant portion of your transmit power is literally absorbed by the dirt, just sucks it in, converted into microscopic amounts of heat rather than being radiated into the sky. And raising the antenna gets it further out of the loss zone, increasing your overall radiated efficiency. Now, let me say, with respect to this, too, we're doing another video here on the difference that makes with vertical antennas, higher or lower above ground. And that's surprising. So be sure to watch that one too. What are the general rules of thumb here, Tom?
Well, to sum it up, the general rule of thumb would be for 40, 80, and 160 meters, regional net operation, putting a dipole up about 30 to 40 feet is functionally low enough to act as a fantastic NVIS antenna. You'll dominate the local nets and have strong signals within, a few hundred miles. But for 20 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters, and you're operating DX, getting a dipole to, 30 to 40 feet up puts it at a half wavelength or higher. Your takeoff angle will drop, and you'll start working stations across the ocean.
Yeah, this reminds me of the video I did a little while back, a short. I'll put a link down below for that too, about this loop antenna I put. It was only about 12 feet high, and I had terrible trouble, and the storms took it down and all. But big loop antenna, I think it was about 220 feet long or so. And boy, did that sucker work on receive for close-in stations on 40 within a couple hundred miles. But for distance stuff, it was no good whatsoever. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We hope this helps you a little bit think about how high to put your dipole, assuming it's a horizontal dipole, not something like an inverted V. If you have chance to move it up or down, or if you're going out in the field, what you should do. It depends really on what bands or frequencies you're on and whether or not you want to get a certain angle of radiation to work closer in or further out. So keep watching. It's Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Quinn, K8QS.
I'm Tom, W89TDD.
And please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. See you later, everybody. Here we are again, Tom, Ham Radio Perspectives. Okay. And I am Quinn, K8QS.
And I'm Tom, W89TDD. And where do we go today, Quinn?
You tell me.
Okay, well, let's talk about how the height above ground affects the performance of high-frequency verticals. How about that?
No, we're going to do dipoles today.
Okay.
We're going to do verticals. And
I got verticals up.
You got verticals up. Okay.
Hang on.
Yep.
Vertical dipole. All right.
Should say final.
Yeah, I got it.
All right.